A reading from John chapter 6, verses 1 to 21. After this, Jesus went to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, also called the Sea of Tiberias. A large crowd kept following him because they saw the signs that he was doing for the sick. Jesus went up the mountain and sat down there with his disciples. Now the Passover, the festival of the Jews, was near. When he looked up and saw a large crowd coming towards him, Jesus said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread for these people to eat?" He said this to test him, for he himself knew what he was going to do. Philip answered him, 6 months' wages would not buy enough bread for each of them to get a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are they among so many people?" Jesus said, "Make the people sit down." Now there was a great deal of grass in the place, so they sat down, about 5,000 in all. Then Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated. So also the fish, as much as they wanted. When they were satisfied, he told his disciples, "Gather up the fragments left over, so that nothing may be lost." So they gathered them up, and from the fragments of the 5 barley loaves left by those who had eaten, they filled 12 baskets. When the people saw the sign that he had done, they began to say, this is indeed the prophet who is to come into the world." When Jesus realized that they were about to come and take him by force to make him their king, he withdrew again to the mountains by himself. When evening came, his disciples went down to the lake, got into a boat, and started across the lake to Capernaum. It was now dark, and Jesus had not yet come to them. The lake became rough because a strong wind was blowing. When they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the lake and coming near the boat, and they were terrified. But he said to them, "It is I, do not be afraid." Then they wanted to take him into the boat, and immediately the boat reached the land towards which they were going. Here ends our scripture reading for this morning. 579 years ago, Johann Gutenberg invented the first printing press in 1439. Since that day, printers have gone from being in print shops to being in nearly every home. In that time, printing went from being a daunting task to being as simple as pushing a button. Printers have become reasonably priced, minus the ink, of course, and paper equally as cheap and easy to find. Just head to an Office Depot or a Staples during the back-to-school sales in the next few weeks. You will see it in force. And since Gutenberg's first printer, technology has grown and changed too, making new things possible. One of the newest and greatest technologies is a 3D printer. Printers that print actual objects made out of metal, ceramic, or plastic, whatever you choose. If you break your favorite coffee mug that says, "I love you, Dad," you can easily go to your printer and have it reprinted. If you have a part go out on your lawnmower on Sunday afternoon when all of the stores in town are closed and you don't want to go drive to Lowe's or Home Depot an hour away, that's okay. Just print it on your 3D printer. In fact, there is even a 3D printer that is slowly picking up steam that prints food. That's right, you heard me, food. It is called the Foodini. The Foodini satisfies our favorite pastime of eating just by printing food. Sure, it has a hefty price tag at the moment, but so did the first printing press. Someday, we could have a Foodini in our home and be able to access it through a mobile app, making sure that dinner was printed and ready to go by the time that we reached the front door. Who remembers watching the Jetsons? Anybody? Well, the Foodini is your Jetson meal dream come to life. Foodinis are currently only available for restaurants or professional cooks, but one person who could have really benefited from a Foodini was Jesus when he was faced with having to feed 5,000 people with only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. This is our gospel lesson for this morning, one that we have heard many times in our lifetime. That is because it is a significant story in Jesus' ministry. It is such a massive part of his ministry that it is in all 4 gospels. It is a story a lot of people showing, it is a story about a lot of people showing up for dinner without a proper invite. The people had heard and seen just what Jesus was going around and doing by healing the sick. The people wanted to keep watching. They wanted to see what this miraculous man was going to do next. What more miraculous things was he going to do? And I don't blame them. As the day went on, the crowds kept following. When it got time for supper, no one had left and more people had showed up. The disciples and Jesus weren't just going to sit down in front of them and eat and not share. That would have been rude. So how do they feed all of these people? And fun fact about the Gospel of John, of the 4 Gospels, only in John does Jesus himself pose the question of how are they going to feed this crowd. Only in the Gospel of John does Jesus himself hand out the food to each and every person gathered. The other 3 Gospels have disciples asking Jesus what to do and then going forth and sharing the meal with them once Jesus has blessed it. Now Jesus asks, how do we feed these people? He asks Philip, but honestly, it was a rhetorical question because it even says he himself knew what he was going to do. Jesus already knew what was going to happen and how this was going to play out, but he still was talking out loud when they were trying to figure out what to do. He was answering the disciples' question in a way. Food was brought forth, 5 loaves of barley and barley bread, a bread of the poor people, and 2 small tilapia-style type fish, a modern-day po' boy sandwich, if you will. Jesus blesses the meal and gives thanks to God, and he begins to hand out the fish and the bread to the people. In the end, there were 12 baskets left over. As the food replicated and multiplied, it was going at a pace that would make the first printing press or even a modern-day printer burn out in exhaustion just by how fast this food was multiplying and multiplying and multiplying so that everyone had their fill. The crowd and the disciples were beyond amazed. The food multiplying and spreading to fill all who were present was a big deal. But in John's gospel, he wants us to focus on more than just the 5 loaves and 2 fish that fed thousands. This story took place around the Passover, a celebration that honors the Israelites' escape and their freedom from Egypt. To this very day, Jewish families still celebrate the Passover each year. When Jesus broke bread with the thousands, it was a reminder of the daily bread that sustained the Israelites while they wandered in the desert for 40 years. It was the bread that God provided in the manna that kept the people alive and going, helping them to reach the promised land. It is also a reminder to us of the meal that Jesus had with his disciples on the night in which he was betrayed. In fact, the feeding of the thousands has many parallels to the Last Supper. Jesus blessed and broke the bread and served each of his disciples just as he served everyone in the crowd. Jesus' Last Supper is a meal that we replicate month after month, and in some churches, week after week. When we copy and we paste the Lord's Supper, we are distributing the bread of life. For Jesus said, "I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty." The bread of life is what sustains us, fills us, strengthens us on a daily and a weekly basis. The Lord's Supper is a meal that is freely given to us by Jesus, who paid the bill in full with his broken body and the blood that he shed for us. All we have to do is come to the table. We go through life busy. Summer is busy with vacations and trips and ice cream social. The school year is busy with football games and basketball games and volleyball games and trips, field trips, everything. Fall is busy with the harvest. Winter is busy with snow and Christmas. Spring is busy with planting. Life is busy. When life gets hectic, we tend to forget to stop and reflect, to stop and to give thanks to God for all that we have. For it may be a hectic life, but honestly, I don't think a single one of you would take it back for anything in the world. God gives us an abundance of love, of bread, of manna from heaven. In the past few weeks, I've been reflecting on Sunday mornings. What does Sunday morning mean for me? As your pastor, I'm not the one being preached to. I'm the one doing the preaching. So how do I get my fill? How do I feel filled on Sunday mornings? Sundays can be draining on a pastor. There's no doubt about that. But I also walk away recharged, refreshed, and ready to face the week ahead. I am excited to see your smiling faces when you come in the door on Sunday morning, to catch up on life, to break bread, whether that be communion or cakes. I look forward to laughing with you and being with you every Sunday. That is why I am here no later than 7:30 every Sunday morning. I come in and I center myself, getting everything ready for worship so that I can spend as much time with each of you from the minute that you walk in that door, and the first one comes in at 9:15, to the minute that you leave the door and I walk out the door as well. We share in the breaking of the bread next Sunday. But I feel that each week, when we come together as a church family, we are feeding off of the bread of life. We are relaxing. We are letting our batteries recharge, reflecting on the week gone by, and leaving refreshed for the week ahead. The 5 R's. That is what the bread of life does. It fills us, it sustains us, it strengthens us. The crowds that followed Jesus weren't necessarily looking to be fed actual food. They were hoping to be spiritually fed by this man who was healing the sick, loving the poor, and doing so many amazing things. The fact that Jesus fed them bread and fish was a bonus because it was the multiplication that amazed them. It wasn't the quality of food that they walked away talking about for days and weeks and months to go. They weren't sharing that. They were sharing that Jesus fed thousands of people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, with extra to spare. They had seen a miracle happen in front of their eyes. So when you come to this place, come to be spiritually fed the bread of life each week, giving thanks to God for all that has been given to you, not only yesterday, not only tomorrow, not only today, but every day. Come and be filled. Amen.